Hi guys, welcome back. In this video we're going to take a look at how I would approach the building of a very simple sort of material and shading network, so we can have the ability to put our favorite texture maps on this and get the look that we're going for. So in the last video we made a start on building the digital asset parameter system. Now this is something that I kind of do on an ongoing basis, so I'll continue to add those parameters to the digital asset as I see fit, really. As I find a need for them, I'll add it as a parameter and it'll kind of develop over time. So that's kind of why I sort of left it where it is, because I know there'll be more development to come on it. So let's just take a look at where we're at the moment. We've got our digital asset here with our two inputs that we still need to fix because they don't do anything at the moment. So let's just jump inside to our brick wall tool. And we can see we've got our output node selected and we're seeing the finished result of our build mode. What I'm going to do is going to right click on the digital asset, bring up my type properties. And I just want to add a new folder structure for the materials and shading. So let's jump over to parameters, and here we can see our parameter network laid out. I'm going to add a new folder and I'm going to call it materials. Okay, and within that folder I'm going to create 3 new folders. So just click and drag into that little folder structure, and each of these folders is going to correspond to one of the primitive groups that we've set up earlier. So if we middle click on our output, you can see we've got 3 primitive groups set up which we'll use for shading. So we've got the damaged edges, which is brick chips, and obviously the brick face, and then a group for grout as well. So let's just configure those folders. So folder name will be brick face, and then brick chips, and then finally grout. And again, you can configure these however you see fit. Like I said, building these UIs is very personal and you'll have your own preferences, but what I want this to be, I want the main root folder to be just simple, and then underneath that simple folder I want 3 tabs. So a tab for the brick face, etc, etc. Now within these folders we want to add the ability to plug in a texture map. Okay, so what we need from our parameter type here is a file. So if we find that, there we go, file image is the one that we're looking for. So we can drag one of those into the brick face, and we're making a start on building up our shader network. So I'm going to give this a label, diffuse or albedo, depending on your pipeline, and I'll give it a reasonable name, brick face diffuse. And I'm just working on a very sort of standard PBR type setup. So we'll have a diffuse texture map, we'll have one for ambient occlusion, so AO, ambient occlusion. And if sorry, I've skipped past that. If you want to duplicate them very quickly, you just need to press D on your keyboard and it'll make a duplicate of that. The next one we're going to make use of is roughness. Roughness. And also we need one for a normal map. And like I said, depending on your pipeline or what your material preferences or what your target output for this is, whether it's, you might be outputting to USD or you might be rendering within Houdini or Arnold or anything like that, depending on your pipeline, configure this how you see fit. For this, I've been rendering it using USD and Solaris in Houdini. So this kind of setup is, like I said, it's pretty standard and it works well for my needs. So let's take those, and we can Control C and Control V into the brick chips, and we'll just need to change those names a little bit. So brick chip diffuse, brick chip AO, and then brick chip roughness. So we're just giving each one a unique name just to keep things simple when we jump into the shading network there. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there because obviously we've got the grout to do as well, but as you can see, there is a lot of duplication in this setup phase. So what we'll do is we'll focus in on configuring the brick face and the brick chips, and I'll leave you guys to configure the grout as well. And then once you've got all those linked up, you'll have the full shading network configured. So I'm going to hit apply on that. Let Houdini do a little bit of cooking for some reason, but there we go. Okay, and next what we need to build that material network. So I'm going to jump into my digital asset, put down a material network. So this is just like a simple folder structure where we can keep all our materials and build and manipulate and edit them however we see fit. We're going to keep this really simple. We're going to take advantage of the principled shader, which is the sort of the do-it-all super shader that Houdini ships with. And this is very standard, you know, it's based on the Disney BDRF thing that all the other shaders are based on. So this is a very sort of industry standard shader and works well and sort of communicates well with other packages and transfers well. So what I would recommend, because this at first glance is a bit of a beast, this principled shader. However, again, my constant tip is the click for help button. So up here, the little question mark will bring you to a really good piece of documentation on the principled shader, and it gives you some examples of what values to plug in should you wish to achieve a certain look. And it's definitely worth reviewing if you're kind of still learning or unfamiliar with some of these techniques. If you want to achieve a certain look, you can usually find the information in here. Okay, so that's another read the manual tip from me. Okay, and also if you click on the little cog here, this is often quite useful. If you want something just as a starting point, you've got a bunch of presets here within the principled shader. So maybe not for this particular project we can't, but you know, if you want to get something up off the ground very, very quickly, these presets here are often a really great place to start. Okay, so with that, let's give it a name that makes sense. So we'll call this brick face. Okay, and also we need another one. So I'm just going to hold down Alt and drag the shader there. And this one is going to be our edge damage, or our brick chips as we've been calling it. In addition, hold down Alt, click again, and then we've got our grout. Okay, so this is our little sort of shader library, if you like, for this particular setup. Okay, and like I said, it's very, very simple. We're going to take advantage of a couple of features of this principled shader here. The fact that we can use any existing point color on our geometry to tint these the points when it comes to shading is super useful. We're going to take advantage of that because if we look, we can see we've added some color to the bricks to add a little bit of variation. This will be multiplied on top of the point color will be multiplied on top of any incoming texture map, so we'll get that subtle variation across. Okay, the base color tint is set quite low at the moment. We're just going to set that to full white just so we're multiplying by 1. But again, this can be tweaked if you want to adjust the look. Okay, so with that, it's just a matter of making these connections to what we've created in our digital asset here and making those connections to the principled shader. All right, so we're going to jump across to the textures tab. Okay, we're going to activate base color. Okay, and we want to link this texture path here to our digital asset. So I'm going to click on the parameter that I am interested in. I'm going to jump across to channels, and then I'm just going to click and drag onto where it says drop parameters. So I'm going to click, drag. I'll try that again. Oh, it's made that. So if I hit apply, Houdini's going to do some cooking, and hopefully this will turn green. There we go. So there you can see our texture field for the base color has been linked directly to our digital asset there. Great. Okay, so moving on, roughness, we want to do the same thing. So I'm going to enable roughness, jump across to my roughness, and then just grab that texture field and drop it on there till we get the link. Okay, and again for ambient occlusion, so scroll down all these different channels that we're not going to be using, and then find occlusion, turn that on, and then just make sure you are on the right channel on the digital asset to click, drag, and make those connections. All right, finally, as we scroll back up, the principal shader, bump and normals will enable that. And on our normal, we'll do the same thing on the texture path. So we'll click and drag that, hit apply. Houdini's going to go do its thing, but hopefully what we've done now is we've linked up these parameters, and we, we've made those connections available to the end user. They'll be able to plug in their favorite texture map or the type of look that they're going for and get the desired output. Okay, so let's just do a quick test of that. So what I've done is I've just selected a tiling stone texture from textures.com. It's just a free one. So let's plug that in and see what results we get. So I am going to jump up a few levels to my digital asset. You can press U to jump up if you're unfamiliar with that shortcut. And let's take a look at our digital asset now. So now we've got this material section with our neatly laid out, well, unfinished grout, but there we go. So brick face here. So what I want to do is just plug in that texture map just to make sure all the group assignments are working. And yeah, so there we go. So I'm going to open that. I'm going to point it to my place on disk where I've kept texture archive stone. So yeah, I'm just going to bring in this base color. Now I'm currently working in the ACES color space. So I've converted these images over to ACES. If you're unfamiliar with that, I've got some videos on my channel about what ACES is and the importance of it, or how ubiquitous it is in CG art over the last couple of years. So if you're unfamiliar with ACES, check those out. Yeah, give them a like as well. So I'm just going to bring in that. For the ambient occlusion, I'm going to point it to the same place on disk where all these files are, and then roughness, and then normal. Okay, so bring in the normal map as well. So you can see it's dead easy. Once you've sort of identified the texture maps you want to use, it's very easy to make those connections at the digital asset level. So we're not digging around inside material networks and such. Okay, so nothing's changed. Right, so let's investigate that. So this little button here is the display materials in viewport. Okay, so let's just jump in. And the reason it's not showing anything is we've not made any material assignments yet. We've created those materials in our material network, but we haven't assigned them to anything yet. So let's drop down a material node and plug that just before the output. Okay. And here we can make those assignments based on the groups that we've had. So currently we've got 1. Well, we know we need 3. So we can click this little insert button to create 3. Material number 1 is going to take use of the brick face group. And then we can point that to our material network and then brick face. Okay. And there we go. Straight away we can see those material assignments are working for us. And also what you can see is that it's also tinting the bricks slightly different shades based on that incoming color that we're generating, which is super useful, just for mixing it up a little bit, getting that extra layer of variation in there. So let's jump across, continue on. Material number 2 now is our brick chips, and we'll point that to our brick chips. Okay, and there we go. And finally, for group grout, we can plug that to our grout. Okay, now we've not finished making up those links for the other materials yet. Like I said, there's a lot of repetition in this setup phase, so I will spare you that. But ultimately, the setup should be the same. So what I've been doing is I've been taking these texture maps for the brick face and just using them for the brick chips, but the tint value is what gives them the different shade. So take advantage of that. And then, find some sort of rocky, stony, cement, grouty type material on textures.com. Again, great free resource for just grabbing nice tiling materials. Or you can make your own in something like Substance Designer, for example. The key thing is that they tile neatly. Okay, now before we go, one more parameter that we want to add to this wall. We want to give the end user the ability to increase or decrease the scaling of the texture maps depending on what they want. So currently we can see we've got a decent size. based on our texel density that we've configured. But it might be useful just to give a global scalar parameter to just enlarge or shrink down those the way the textures are projected onto that. So let's jump back to our type properties. And in our materials folder, we just want to put a floating point value there. I'm just going to drag it at the root of materials there and just bring it to the top of that list. Okay. Now this is going to be our UV global scale. And we'll call it UV scale. Okay. And we'll give it a range. We don't ever want it to be a 0, but we might want it to be pretty small. Okay, so we'll say 0.1. And then 10 seems reasonable, but we'll leave that unlocked in case you want to have, very, 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 very tiny texture projection. All right, so we'll hit apply on that. Houdini's going to do its thing again. Okay, and I'll show you where we need to hook that up to. Okay. So in our material net, okay, if we jump across to settings, we've got this UV scale parameter here. Now we want to link up our UV scale that we just created to these parameters so we can drive that value across all of our shaders simultaneously, because remember, we've established the ratio of UV coordinates between the separate elements, so we want them to all scale uniformly, so we're not having any sort of texel density issues across the different maps that we use. So a quick way to do that, we can bring up our type properties and we can find our UV global scale. Okay, and we can set the default to be 1, okay, because we want it to come in at 1, okay, and then let's just start making those connections. So I'm going to grab that scale parameter, I'm going to jump across to the brick chips, settings, scale, drag that in there. Oh, sorry, it needs to be 3 up here. There we go. So yeah, it needs to be 3. So we can link all 3 parameters, grab that scale, drop that in there. It's already activated, so I'm just going to, sorry, I made a bit of a mess with that. So I'm just going to unlink them, make sure they're all at default 1, and then grab that, drop it there, and then grab that and drop it there. No, that didn't seem to work either. Let's just debug this. Okay, let's do it another way. Right, okay, so this is confusing, even me. So let's drop that back down to 1, and we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, so UV scale has got a name, UV global scale. Okay, so let's just do it the old-fashioned way with channel referencing. I feel much more confident doing. So we need to go up a level, up another level, up another level to our brick wall tool. Okay, and then the parameter that we're interested in is UV global scale. There it is. All right, that's so much easier, isn't it? So yeah, so // means come out of this network, come out of the other network. So we're kind of traversing this hierarchy, but going backwards from where we are. So // and will take us to this point here. So out of this node, into this node, and into this node. And then with that reference set up there, we could just grab that string and then do a Control V on each of them. So much quicker. I don't know why I was trying to be fancy there, when that takes literally seconds to configure like that. So we've linked up all those UV scale parameters to our UV global scale, and let's just hit apply and accept on that. Okay, so like I said, I'll leave you guys to configure the brick chips and the grout, and at the end of it you should have 3 materials that are linked up and I've got some interesting parameters and should give you the ability to swap and change depending on the type of look you're going for. Consider your own workflow on what you're trying to get out of it. You could add in displacement maps into that. So yeah, I think we'll leave that there because this video has gone on quite a bit longer than anticipated. In the next video, what we're going to do, there's those two inputs that we need to look at. So if we jump up a couple of levels, we've got this input for our curve, so we can draw out the shape of our wall. We've also got this this volume that we need to configure where we can actively remove bricks from the brickwork as well. So I guess we'll do that in the next video. So thanks very much for watching. If you made it this far, congratulations. Please like and subscribe and all that good YouTube stuff. That's really helpful. And I shall see you in the next video. Thanks.